Lighting. Why does your lighting still feel off even when everything else looks right? What's missing and how do you actually get that cinematic look? Don't worry, by the end of this video you'll have your answers. Today we are going to talk about cinematic lighting. The first question we have to ask ourselves is, what does cinematic even mean? Everybody wants their renders to look cinematic, but barely anyone knows what that actually means. So instead of saying, I want cinematic renders, say, I want my render to look interesting. By making the lighting interesting, the render immediately becomes more cinematic. Now that we know this, let's briefly talk about the different light types so you know when to use each one. First, we have the point light. It's like a light bulb, a single point that emits light in every direction. You can change the radius to increase the lit area, but this also makes the light a bit softer. It works well for torches and magical effects. Next is the spotlight. It works like an actual spotlight. You can change the angle to control the area where the light is visible. Spotlights are great for almost everything, but especially for lamps and light beams. The area light is, as the name suggests, a specific area that emits light. Imagine it like a window. The entire window emits light. You can change the spread to make the light harder or softer. The size controls where the light comes from. The bigger the area, the softer the light. Area lights are great for natural lighting and areas that simply need to emit light. The sunlight works like the sun. That's it. You can change the angle to soften the shadows, and light beams, it's mostly used when you need the sun. These are the four main light types. There are of course more like HDRIs, which I always use for lighting my environment renders. An HDRI is a 360-degree image used to calculate light directions and reflection. It usually gives the most realistic lighting because it's built from real environments. The last question we have to ask ourselves is, what mood are we going for and what emotion do we want to convey? We do this by using colors. We all know that blue gives a colder feeling and orange gives a warmer feeling. But what about green, yellow or even purple? The answer is, it depends. Yellow and green mostly gives a hopeful feeling, while purple creates a sense of the unknown. Even if the lighting looks interesting, if your color palette doesn't match the environment, it will feel off. But we will talk more about that later on. Now we can start creating cinematic lighting, but keep one thing in mind. Everything I told you are guidelines, not rules. Creating cinematic lighting is still a creative process and it doesn't have strict rules. These guidelines are only meant to help. We will start with this simple model. I want to make him look interesting and create a slight feeling of the unknown. I will use an area light for this one. First, I create a side light to get a sense of contrast. Let's make the spread a bit smaller and change the light color to green. Now let's add another light from the back, also an area light. Place it slightly over its shoulder. For this, I use purple. These two colors work pretty well together. And now he already looks interesting, pretty easy, Let's do another one. This time I want to create a creepy and dark feeling. For this one I use a spotlight and place it above the model. Now let's make the angle much smaller and soften the light by increasing the radius. I think green will look pretty nice for this one. And that's it, you see, it's pretty simple. Now let's use a bit more than just two lights. I wanted something a bit mysterious, so I started with a simple blockout using just a plane and a few cylinders. The goal was to quickly create some depth and contrast from the beginning. For this scene I also wanted animation, so I recorded myself doing some uncertain acting, just experimenting really. Now that I have a cool animation, I started by darkening the scene and adding a spotlight from above. I then duplicated that spotlight, placing one in front of the character and one behind it to build more depth. I used red for a more dangerous and dramatic feel. Next, I added a green point light in the back to create a color contrast, along with an area light in the same green to softly lift the character. For the rim light, I duplicated the area light again and narrowed its spread so it hits the character in a more detailed way. To make the lighting more interesting, I added another red tinted point light in the back and used a gobo. A gobo is basically a silhouette placed in front of a light, creating an illusion that the light is shining through an object. In Blender, this is done by enabling Use Nodes in the light settings. Then you add a black and white image and plug its color output into the light string. I also added a texture coordinate node and a mapping node before the image, which lets me control the scale and the positioning. Finally, I placed the light so the window silhouette appears in the top right corner. With that, the lighting setup feels much more dynamic and interesting. An extra tip that helps me all the time is looking for references in movies and series for lighting and matching color palettes. By analyzing them, you realize how much more is used than you first thought. Let me show you. In this scene from Blade Runner, we can see a person standing in a room. He's positioned in front of a large light that illuminates the overall scene. If we look a bit closer, we can see a light at the bottom that lights his side for more contrast. He is also lit on this part of his face. This could be coming from the bottom light, but it could also be an extra third light. Now let's recreate this lighting setup with the same colors in Blender. I roughly recreated the scene. First, let's create the fill light using a point light and place it in the same position. Play a bit with the radius and change the color to a cold green. Next, I use an area light for the side lighting. Lower the spread, increase the size and place it at the bottom just like we see in the reference. I use an extra light for the side lighting on his head. Just duplicate the area light and place it so it only lights that small area. I'll make it a bit more green for extra contrast. You can see, now we have cinematic lighting. I mean, yeah, the scene itself looks a bit boring, but you can replace this block out with anything and create any scene you want. That's why reference really help you. The last thing I recommend is always using volumes. Just create a large cube that covers the whole scene and use a volume scatter node. Play around with the anisotropy and density. As you can see, this makes the scene way more interesting and cooler to look at. But that's it for now. Just try and play around with the lighting. It may take some time before you get the result you want, but it will be worth it. I hope I was able to help you with this video. If you still have any questions about lighting, feel free to ask in the comments or DM me on Instagram. See you!